This conference will now be recorded.
All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Amanda. I am the Center Director at Brain Balance of San Diego and Chula Vista, and we're so excited to have Sonia with us today from Sonia's Healthy Corner. She will be doing a presentation for us tonight on food for thought and healthy kids. There's a lot of registrants, so I'm excited to hear what she has to share with our community, and there's a lot of great questions that you all asked in your registration. So I want to make sure we get started. But just a quick intro on brain balance. Who are we and why are we doing this topic? Why do we partner with Sonia? We're a really unique research-based drug-free program that trains the brain and rewires the brain so that you struggle less with things like attention and focus challenges, maybe self-regulation challenges, but really those cognitive, social, or behavioral challenges that your child or yourself might be feeling. We have a really unique personalized approach to support your brain and your development in a matter of months. It's really unique program. So ages 4 and up all the way to adults. Whether or not you have a diagnosis, it does not matter. We are non-medical, so we don't diagnose either, but we can really help you understand who your child or yourself just where are you developmentally, where are you fundamentally to help you reach your potential. And some of the main challenges we tend to work with are folks with attention and focus issues, or ADHD, sensory processing we see quite a bit of. We do see folks with autism and the challenges associated with autism, learning disorders, and more. Essentially, what we want is for the brain to be balanced, for things to be clicking and communicating appropriately, so that, again, we are functioning at our best. And whenever there's imbalances, those symptoms that we tend to identify in our kiddos, whether it's tantrums or difficulty learning, difficulty connecting with friends or their emotions, those are just red flags that something's not quite communicating as it should. And so when in our program, in our assessment, we help you understand, again, who are you and what's your child like, basically, as a whole, what's going on and what gaps and holes in their development do we need to support, all right? And part of that is understanding nutrition, and that's why we have Sonia with us today. What we feed our body really can affect how the brain is talking to one another. Besides the sensory, motor, and physical exercise that help train it, we need to make sure we fuel the body appropriately. So I'm excited to get going with her soon. Some upcoming events we do have next month, though, stay tuned. We do have a virtual open house on Tuesday, February 8th. We'll have a topic around coaching independence as well. So if you're trying to figure out, what's age appropriate for your kiddo, how do you build up executive functioning skills and really support your child in being successful on their own, please join us for this short presentation. It is virtual and it is free. You can share that with others. And we also have another workshop that will be listed on our website, brainbalancesandiego.com, on learning challenges as well later on in the month. So stay tuned with us, stay in touch. There's a lot of different resources for you on our website and on our YouTube channel. This presentation will be recorded and shared there as well, and we'll send everyone an email with those resources afterwards, okay? And also you can find Sonia, Sonia's Healthy Corner, on social media as well. So follow her and follow Brain Balance San Diego or Brain Balance Chula Vista to stay in touch, okay? All right, so I'm gonna hand it over to Sonia. She she's a certified health coach and a nutrition coach. And tonight she, again, has a great topic in helping all of our families on what exactly is nutrition, what's the deal with the gut-brain axis, and more. And I'll let her introduce herself and her presentation tonight. Welcome, Sonia.
Thank you very much, Amanda. Thank you for having me. And thank you, everybody, for joining this evening. And I will share my screen with you guys. Make sure before I start talking more that you guys can see. Can you guys see my screen? Amanda?
Yes, we can see your screen. And if anybody has any, if anybody has any issues, please make sure you type it in the chat box. I'm sure Sonia will ask you questions too. So engage with us in the chat box and we'll chat with you there.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Well, thank you for the introduction. Thank you for being here. My name is Sonia Cervantes. I'm a certified health coach and certified nutritionist and a master herbalist and a foodie. I love food and I love kids, and that's why I'm here. I want to share with you, also I'm a founder of Sonia's Healthy Corner, and I empower individuals and families, children and parents, to take charge of their health so they can live healthy and happy through simple lifestyle changes. And today I'm going to be talking about a topic that is super important, as Amanda mentioned, the brain. So what happens with the brain and the correlation of food, specifically the brain of our kiddos, and what happens with the food they eat. Without any further ado, let's start with the topic. And I'm not going to get too fancy on the description of the brain. I'm just going to keep it very simple. The brain is a very complex organ, and it is responsible pretty much for all the functions in our body, right? It is responsible for our thoughts, our memory, our speech, our movement, our behavior, and many other functions in our system and in the whole body. It is composed of specialized cells, and those cells are called neurons, okay? Those neurons are messengers, and they transmit information from the brain to the nervous system throughout the body. So our body systems and organs can function properly. So basically, they do that through electrical impulses or chemical signals. So our body is full of energy. We are energy, okay? So now those neurons, there are cells like any other cell, they have a membrane, okay? And the membrane really serves as a filter to keep the bad stuff out and allow the good stuff in to the cell. And when I'm referring to the bad stuff, is all the toxins and all the pollutants and the junk food we eat, right? And the good stuff is all the nourishment that serves the cell, specifically talking about cells in the brain. Unfortunately, when the cell is malnourished, it starts getting faulty. It's like a car, right? If you put bad gasoline on a car, then it starts failing or it starts misfiring. Well, that's exactly what happens with the cells, with the neurons, and pretty much everything else that happens inside the brain. It has to work properly. That's why it's important that we recognize that food matters, and food matters when it comes to our kids, okay? So let's talk a little bit about the brain development. This is why it's super important that we pay attention to what we feed our kids with. The brain grows up to 90%. The growth of the brain is 90% from birth to age 5. I don't know if you guys knew that. I didn't, obviously, until started my classes. So that's huge, right? So that means from age 1 to from 0, basically birth, to 5, the brain grows 90%. Now that growth is requiring fuel. It's requiring energy to grow. So depending on what you feed your body with, that quality of fuel is going to impact the development and the growth. Also, after 5 years old, at 6, it's known to say that there's more synapses happening at age 5 than at any other age. And we'll go into, I'm not going to go into the biology of the synapses, but well, let's go to the next slide and I'll explain what that is. If you guys see over there, those little dots, those are the neurons, and those are messengers, right? So you see they're exchanging electrical impulses, right? Or chemical signals. And that space that you see in between, that's a synapse. And what happens is, basically, it means more activity. So at age 6 is when our kiddos have the most activity in their brains. Another thing to consider that is super important is myelin. You can see on the paragraph below, myelin is pretty much the protective insulation in our wiring. You know, we all talk about, oh, geez, my wires are misfiring. It's a cheesy way to say it, but it is true. We have wires, we have connections. And the myelin is the insulator that protects that wiring. Again, what is the impact of good nutrition? Well, it's very well self-explanatory in this slide. See, this is what happens. The myelin needs good food. We call it smart food. When you provide healthy food to your kiddo, then those cells are going to be nourished. And that myelin is going to do the job that it's supposed to do, which is protect all those messages. So the neurotransmitters are actually doing the job that they're supposed to be doing. Whereas if you feed your kiddos with junk food, then their myelin gets frayed. So there's disruption in the communication. And that's when we start seeing problems. Reiterating, okay, we all heard you are what we eat. Yes, and our children are what they eat as well. So what they eat affects not just their bodies, right? It affects the way they act, their mood, their behavior, the way they think, and school-age children, it affects their learning. The rapidly growing brains use more than 50% of the energy, right? I mentioned that as our brain is growing and develop, it needs fuel. So think about that, right? The kids need, their brain is growing up to 90% age 5, and they also need more than 50% of the total nutritional energy goes towards that growth. So nutrition is super, super key here. And it affects the messaging, as I mentioned, with all the neurotransmitters and everything. Okay. Nutrition in the brain, just a summary. Another thing to consider, the brain is 60% fat. And this is applicable to all of us, by the way, not just children. Our brain is composed mainly of fat tissue. And that's good because it's protecting what's inside of the brain. The challenge here is the toxins, anything, environmental pollutants, any pathogens, any toxicity goes into our bodies, it typically is stored in the fat tissue. So it's super important, and I'll get into the details on how to consume healthy fats and not just, just fats, healthy fats. The other thing to consider is that carbs are important, guys, but complex carbs, healthy carbs with fiber. I'm not talking about sugars. I'm talking about complex carbohydrates. And I'll go, again, more into detail of what falls under that category. And it talks here about the blood-brain barrier. It's undeveloped because the brain is still in development. What does that mean? That means that the brain of our kiddos is vulnerable. So again, if we don't protect it and if we don't nourish it well, then that's when we start experiencing, or they start experiencing issues. Now, I want to talk to you guys about the D epidemic, and this description it's given by Dr. Sears. He is a well-renowned pediatrician that is describing the different disorders, ADD, ADHD, OCD, even depression and diabetes, as a nutrition deficit disorder. Why? Because there is research that actually links malnourishment or nutrition deficits that trigger these disorders. I'm not saying it's the cause, He's not saying it's the cause, but it absolutely, the research says that is definitely a trigger. So that's why it's important to keep that in mind. So what do we do? Okay, so we know that the brain is growing in our children, that we should protect it. How do we start? Okay, well, it's very simple, right? Not that simple. Not that simple when we put it into practice, and I'll share with you some things that we can do to simplify it and make it relatable and actionable. Out with the bad. Okay, so let's start making changes for our kiddos. And a lot of the things that are considered bad are foods that represent allergies for them, the dirty dozen, additives, and sugar. And I'll explain each one. Now, allergies, there are different allergies, and some kids might haven't, some other kids might not experience it, but it's something that you need to discuss with your pediatrician, right? And then perhaps do the test, or perhaps do an elimination diet, meaning you go to the process of eliminating whatever you think is triggering their allergy, and that way you kind of pinpoint what's causing that specific allergy. So some of the most common are dairy foods, junk foods overall. I mean, it's a big term, right? But unfortunately, junk foods have a lot of fried stuff, processed foods the same. So any preservatives, additives, colorants, it's just going to create problems, right? Those are our chemicals that we introducing into our children's bodies. Chocolate. Who does not like chocolate? Well, some chocolates have up to 200 chemicals in it. So again, it's the quality of the chocolate, maybe a little more of a dark chocolate versus the typical, sugary chocolate. There are ways of doing it, but we're talking specifically of allergies. So there are some kids that are allergic to chocolate, sugar. And even if you don't think your kid is allergic to sugar, because every kid loves sugar, we adults love sugar, but you have to follow the triggers. And if you see a behavior or some sort of outcome that is triggered by that, sometimes it helps to keep a journal and see, okay, why is this happening? Why is he acting this way? Why is certain behavior happening? Okay, well, then you backtrack and you just start a journal. Okay, well, yesterday, this is what we have to eat. I actually keep journals for myself. I keep it for adults, because sometimes we eat things and then all of a sudden you feel sluggish or you get a migraine. It's like, oh gosh, what did I do? What did I drink? Did I not drink enough water? So same thing applies for our kids. Processed meats, I'm talking about those cold meats that we love to put in our Lunchables and sandwiches and all that. They are full of nitrates, and they have other things, a lot of sodium too. Some kids are allergic to that. Contaminated fish. When I say contaminated, well, it's just fish that have a lot of metals like mercury. So there are certain types of fish that are worse than others. And I don't mention it here, but gluten. Gluten has been in the radar for several years now. And more we're seeing allergies, not just happening in adults, but in kids. So there's a lot of foods that have gluten. Okay, so here's a snapshot of the dirty dozen. And I don't expect you to take notes. Just get a glance through it. What my recommendation to you is read labels. Okay, any processed food that comes, anything that's not whole food, that's not created by nature, that has to go through a process for us to eat it, that either comes on a box, in a package, and a jar. We have to learn to read the labels. Some of this, if not most all of them, are in some of those processed foods. Some of them are familiar to you. You know, if you turn around the package and you read what they have, that they have artificial sweeteners, color number 9, color number 10. I mean, they don't have to be M&Ms. They don't have to be junk food. Sometimes even our salad dressings have all this. Ketchup. So we have to learn how to read labels. Okay, so additives. We talked about the additives. What do they do? What do they cause in the brain? Well, first of all, as I said before, the brain of our kiddos is not fully developed. And then up to 10 years old, the brain is still very vulnerable. Even though it's more developed after age 6, it's still vulnerable, okay? So it is affected by the neurotoxins, and neurotoxins are in a lot of these additives that I mentioned. Unfortunately, it's not something that you say, okay, well, I'm gonna stop. It's great that you stop, but it accumulates with the years. So that's even worse, right? So the other thing is MSG and aspartame. Those are hidden. And a lot of the sugars too, by the way. They have different names. I think sugar has like up to 50 names, but MSG has different names. So we have to learn how to read those labels. There's this study talking about sugar that was posted by Yale University, and it's specifically on sugar in the brain of a kid that has ADHD. Now, obviously, sugar it impacts everybody's body, but specifically on ADHD makes it worse. So the study shows that there were lower scores on the test when they started doing, the measuring on it. There's also spikes in blood sugar levels. So they became really fidgety. They have that spike, they have that high, and then the blood sugar level drops. And they started to get very fidgety even 3 hours after the fact. Obviously, there's more sugar addiction prone because of this. So again, sugar is addicted to all of us, even as adults. So imagine our kids. Okay, so that was the bad. Here's the good news, guys. We do have good news. It is in our control to start helping them and helping ourselves. And one of the things I would start by saying, we need to model them too, right? We cannot ask them to do something if we don't model them. Our kids follow, they follow us. So we have to somewhat lead by example. In with the good. And what am I referring to the good is a balance. I'm not talking about a specific diet here. I don't necessarily like the word diet. I want to say more of a nutrition plan that is balanced. Their bodies, as our bodies, need a balance of macronutrients, which are fats, healthy fats, proteins, lean proteins, and complex carbs. And I'll go more into detail on examples of each one. But a diet that is rich in all this nutrient-dense food versus calorie-deprived junk food with no fiber. Okay, so here are some specifics. For lean protein, you want to stick with lean meats. I don't know, some families are plant-based. Same thing, you can get your protein through some of the through plants. Eggs, lean protein, high quality seafood, wild caught, preferably, obviously, because otherwise it has hormones and antibiotics and things like that. Organic when at all possible. I know sometimes it gets expensive, but let's try to stick with organic to stay away from pesticides, not GMO. And if you're going to consume dairy, then let it be organic. Then as far as complex carbs, I said earlier that the brain uses a lot of fuel to grow and develop, and that fuel comes from the carbohydrates. So carbohydrates are important. So all the fruits and vegetables are carbohydrates that have fiber, and not just that, they're rich in antioxidants. All those colors, when you see Eat the Rainbow, all those different colors have different benefits to the body of our kids. Sweet potatoes versus potatoes are good. Sweet potatoes have more fiber. Then all kinds of legumes, kidney beans, lentils, whole grains. Instead of just, that white bread, try to do the multigrain. And of course, I understand that there's some allergies. Some kids might be allergic to certain things. Again, talk to your pediatrician, to your doctor, and make sure that they're not allergic to certain foods. Spices. We never think of, and I shouldn't say never, but I know when I was a kid, I did not know what the word spice was. Probably my mom hid it somewhere in the soups or somewhere, but spices are very good to help the kids with taste buds. Cinnamon, nutmeg, even pepper. I used to like salty foods. I like paprika. So it just depends on the taste buds of your kiddos. And then last but not least, the right fats. I said we all have fat heads. Our brains are 60% composed of fat. Let's give it the right fats. Okay, so avocados, nuts, and nut butters, again, with the exception of those kids that have allergies. Seeds, wild salmon, wild because we don't want it farmed, right? We don't want that mercury. If we want to consume something, we want to consume the fish that is roaming, swimming free in the ocean, that not created or farmed in a small area. Omega-3s, fatty acids, those are going to be very, very good for our brain. I don't know if you heard before, but one of them is the walnuts. And this is the wisdom of the body. I really want to share this because I get so excited when I think about how our bodies are just so smart. If you look at a walnut, what is that image that you see in a walnut? Well, it depicts the brain. It looks like a little brain. If you open the walnut and you look at the whole walnut, it looks like a brain. Well, guess what? It's full of omega-3s, and the omega-3s are good for the brain. So I just find that just super interesting. Okay, well, let's move to the complex carbs. Again, they're the brain's primary fuel, okay? And the kids, they use 50% of the carbs in their diet. We adults still use a lot of those carbs. We use 25%. Again, we have to make them quality carbs. And the good thing is that the brain does not store glucose, okay? So we don't have those issues. Now, if we do eat a lot of sugar, or we give a lot of sugar to the kids, then obviously it impacts their learning, their mood, their behavior. And I know you guys know that. Okay, right fats. Well, our brain, again, it's a fat head. We need the right fats. What are those? Well, we have the omega-3s. And then omega-6 are okay, but there needs to be a balance. Okay, unfortunately, we call it the SAD, but it's the standard American diet. We have too many omega-6 and not enough omega-3s. And if you look at this slide, there has to be a balance, and the brain specifically needs a ratio of 2:1 to 3:1. Unfortunately, with the standard American diet, our kids are getting 10:1. So that's just not good for them, and it's not good for us either. The imbalance obviously causes problems. Our brain cells, remember we talked about sending signals? Well, they don't fire as fast. And then we talked about the myelin. Well, the myelin gets fuzzy. So brain, it's like forgetful, and the memory doesn't work as good. Unfortunately, worse things happen, which is inflammation. So inflammatory diseases like asthma, eczema, IBS, and we see kids with some of these problems. So it's not just for adults. And I just want to summarize by saying this is nutrition is the key, okay? And it's not just kids with ADHD or OCD or autism. It's overall. nutrition is key for brain health. And we just have to provide that. Every day, we should include a brainy breakfast. What is that? Well, first of all, they should have breakfast because that's how they start their day. And we should make it healthy with lots of colors and antioxidants and a balance between the macronutrients that I mentioned, which is healthy fats, lean protein, and complex carbs with fiber. Good nutrition is going to enhance any treatment for any of those disorders. Might not cure it, but it's going to help it. And on the opposite side of the spectrum, if you say, well, I'm already having treatment with drugs, medication, that's fine. But that treatment, if you feed your kid junk food, it's not going to help that much. So it is super important that we use pills and skills, and then we actually have that relationship with our pediatrician or with our doctor and talk to them about what they can do better in regards to nutrition. So this is basically what it is, guys. It's healthy foundations. All my teachings are based on Dr. Sears' Wellness Institute. He promotes health and wellness in 4 core areas. He calls it the acronym LEAN, which is lifestyle, exercise, attitude, and nutrition. And pretty much it applies. Lifestyle is how you live, your habits. Exercise is how you move. Physical activity, super important. We're talking about nutrition today, but this is important. And attitude, how do we encourage or model the behavior for our children, okay? And then obviously nutrition, we talked about that. We talked about the dairy dozen, we talked about the right balance in the macronutrients. And that's all I have for you. Again, my name is Sonia Cervantes. This is my coaching practice. I focus on lifestyle, exercise, attitude, and nutrition for families, family wellness. And you guys can follow me on my social media. I have a YouTube channel as well where I share a lot of recipes. And I know that there's might be some questions out there. I know I have a couple in here. So I'm open. I don't know, Amanda, if you want to take over. Thank you very much.
Yes. First of all, thank you so much for that. I learned so much myself, and I hope that our families were able to take away some information as well. And one of the things I wanted to piggyback on was that lean, right? That is a huge reason why Brain Balance and Sonia's Healthy Corner are teamed up, because we have aligned values. We really believe that to create change, it's not just a silver bullet answer like nutrition. It's also the lifestyle, your attitude, as she mentioned. It's healthy sleep practices and just relationships, right? And it really affects the entire dynamics of a family unit rather than just that individual. So it is a team effort. It takes a village, and it starts from inside out. You are what you eat, like Sonia said. So take care of your body, everyone. And I know one of the biggest questions is, how do you get picky eaters to eat, right? One thing to also consider before Sonia answers is how picky of an eater your child is. That, picky eating is pretty typical. However, when it is pretty extreme and they're really limited to just a handful of items, or they have really strong reactions to certain foods, there may be more going on, right? That's where brain balance comes in. There may be more going on the sensory level and brain connectivity level. And I know Sonia talked a lot about the initial brain development in the beginning of her presentation. So I'll hand it over to you, Sonia. Picky eating, what's your advice? What's going on? And how do you help these families? Many of you put that as your main question and needing help with that.
Yes, thank you, Amanda. Absolutely, it's very common, right? And as you said, it depends how much of a picky eater, right? It really takes up to 8 to 10 times before a child decides to try a new food or to actually assume that he's gonna like it. He could reject it up to 8 to 10 times, guys. So don't feel bad when he or she keeps rejecting it. It's just going to happen. Somebody had asked the question, should I keep insisting? And the answer is yes. Yes, you have to. You have to. Okay. And don't feel bad that you're putting pressure. And of course, there are ways, right? You're not going to. And I don't remember, my mom used to tell us, you're not getting out of that table until you finish everything. And then when she was looking away, my sister and I would give it to the dog. So yeah, that's not a good way. I would just say that's not going to work. But there are ways that you can manage that. And I know we don't have a lot of time here, but some things that come to mind is for fruits and vegetables, which are a big deal, which are the best thing that our kids could eat. You can dip in the nut butters or guacamole or hummus or tomato sauce. That you can tell them it's a spaghetti sauce, but you can make your own tomato sauce. So whatever dip the kid likes. I mean, there are even recipes that you can make your own ranch sauce. So dip it, cut the vegetables or the fruit raw. You can put them on a pizza. You can make a very colorful pizza. And the kids like to participate. I just want to reiterate this. Kids love to get involved if you let them. Sometimes we're just busy and we just, you have an agenda. It's like, okay, you want to help me cook? I don't have time, kid. Just go watch TV and I'll give you the dinner. They love to get involved. They like to do things with their hands. They like to get messy. So they can help you cook, or they can help you cut, safely certain veggies or fruits. The other thing to do is you can disguise them in soups, in smoothies. A lot of the flavors of those green, like leafy greens, if you put it on a smoothie that is sweet with strawberries, it'll disguise the flavor. What does this do? I'm not saying trick your kid. What I'm saying is there's something called metabolic programming, and your kid will develop those taste buds eventually. Okay, so the more fruits and vegetables you expose them with, whether he knows it or not, or whether he likes it or not, the more he's going to develop that taste bud. You can dice them, put them in their mac and cheese or little mac and cheese salad. Design it. I do a couple of classes where I have an food is art component where we make pizzas, we make funny faces, and we have challenges on who made like the most artsy plate. They like to have fun with it, guys. Grocery shopping, take your kids, get them involved. I know they want the bag of Cheetos or this and that, but get them involved in the produce section. And then play games with them, play challenges. There are different ways of doing it. And again, these are just some of the ones that come to mind. But obviously, if you need more help, that's what I do. I do workshops, and what we do. I do interactive, cooking classes and all that. So it's just, I found the best way to entice the kid is to allow him to have fun and to get involved.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sonia. That's everything you said is what Brain Balance recommends as well. Getting your child involved as much as possible and being part of the process, whether at the grocery store or in the kitchen, is really key. You want to develop this healthy relationship around food and not just this is bad and this is good for you and you have to eat that, right? It's getting them involved, getting them to have some autonomy, I guess, around that as well, and understand why we make the decisions that we do. And rather than this, here's an alternative. Rather than you can't have that, here's an alternative that's similar, that's healthier for you. And having conversations around how food affects one. A lot of our parents, whenever the kiddo eats, say, that snow cone, they feel wild or junky or emotional breakdowns. Have that conversation with them afterwards when they calm down. Like, how did that make you feel? Why do you think that made you feel that way, right? But getting them involved, as Sonia said, is really key, and making it fun. I love doing food art with the kids and just getting kids to try different recipes. And there's so many different developmental opportunities in the kitchen together, from reading recipes to fine motor skills, science, math, all that. So definitely get involved. Okay, someone asked, can adults develop gluten allergies later in life? And just in general, maybe generalize it, do allergies or food sensitivities, which are two different things, can that change over time?
Yes, yes, absolutely. And I'll tell you my own story. I mean, I developed sensitivity to dairy, right? And I think there's a lot of people that do that after a certain age, but gluten is the same thing. And, it's, you've been exposed to different things, and we have to acknowledge the fact that we live in a world that we're surrounded by processed food, and sometimes we don't understand those processes, and we don't understand 100% GMOs, and there's a lot of things that happen behind the labs that go into the seeds that we don't know about. So yes, to answer your question, yes, it could happen.
And what about food therapy? A lot of people are asking about that as well. At what point does one consider food therapy, and what does that look like?
Well, I think it's a very individual decision. I mean, I think if you do have a pediatrician and you've been struggling and you exhausted all your resources, right? It goes back to the why. Why are the kids not wanting to eat those healthy foods? Are they just picky eaters? Is it, is it the flavor? Is it a memory attached to it? Is it, I mean, you guys probably are more experts in this topic than I am, but I think it's a very individual. I would say give it a try with, some of the different tips that I gave you, and talk to your doctor, your pediatrician, and just try to make it fun for them. And if it doesn't work, then absolutely, maybe that at that point you want to take it to the next level. But yeah, I would say give it a try.
Thank you. What about in schools? Are the foods that they serve healthy?
Well, I don't know. It varies depending on the school, which school, right? Some schools have passed healthier options and some have not. So it just, I guess you'll be your own judge. The snacks, they taken away sodas. I guess that's good. But if you replace them with fruit juices, and the fruit juices are also full of sugar, then that's not necessarily great. If you have Lunchables where you have a lot of those cold meats and they're full of sodium and nitrates, then that's not necessarily good. So it's just, you have to kind of weigh what they're giving you good and what it's not so good.
Thank you. I'll let Kenny, our center coordinator, also pipe in here. I think there are some questions that may or may not have been answered from the registration.
Okay.
Hi, I think we got to most of them. One that came up kind of along the same lines as the picky eater questions was, if my child isn't touching the healthy food that I pack in lunches, should I continue to pack those or pack other foods or just nothing? What should I do?
Yes, you should continue. And I'll do something funny. I used to, when I was in elementary, my mom would always pack really good food and cut fruit for me and all that good stuff. And it's really nice, cute Disney, lunchbox. And I would get to school and I saw a kid eating, a burger or a sandwich that was, very decadent. And I just traded. I said, hey, I'll give you my fruit if you give me your sandwich. Hey, we're not perfect. It happens. Keep giving the healthy food to your kid. And like I said, it takes up to 8 to 10 times. Now, I can tell you one thing. If the kid is hungry, he or she is going to eat. No choice, right? You got to eat what you have. And the other thing is and this is at home, make the food available at the height of the kids. Leave fruits and vegetables outside in the table where they can reach them. like, I don't know, grapes, something that's colorful, the kids will come and grab those. If they don't have a cookie jar, if they don't have Oreos on top of the table, they will grab what they have if they get hungry.
That's great advice, you know, putting it, like you said, eye level, that's the grocery marketing target too, right? That's the idea. One of my personal rules is you don't buy it, you don't eat it. So I oftentimes have families frustrated, the kids only want to eat chips, like I said, Oreos or cookies. I'm like, well, if you don't buy it, then they don't have that accessible to them, right? At home, at least. A different story at school, but if you create a healthy environment at home, like Sonia said, that's what's available, so they'll eat it. But what's your advice, Sonia? We do have parents, quite a few have told us how the kids really just won't eat all day. They will come home starving from school and, you know, get raid the snack drawer or whatever it may be. And I give the same advice of, you know, you don't buy it, you don't eat it. But what about if the kids really just don't eat all day because they don't want to eat what was packed, or they choose to buy lunch at school instead?
Yeah, well, you have to kind of, you know, you have to put your boundaries in there, right? I'm not saying don't give money to the kids, they have to eat, but that in a way you kind of, you know, I pack you lunch, this is your option. And again, if you get hungry, you're gonna have to eat that. I mean, that's just the way it is. However, obviously you don't wanna, you know, push it because again, not everybody reacts the same way. I would say, just lead by example, right? Don't try to negotiate too much with the kids because they will become better negotiators than you, believe me. So maybe just show them how good it is for them. One thing that really, really works is, like you said, if you don't buy it, you don't eat it. Take them with you to the grocery store and maybe just give them a little, you know, just these are the grow foods. These foods are going to help you play better with your friends. These foods are just not going to help you at all. If you want to, I don't know, play better sports, or you know your kid better than anybody else. You know what it motivates them, and I would say some kids actually like to even grow little, you know, like little plants, grow their own food. When they see that from seed to seedling to plant, they understand that it's Mother Nature. And there are, you know, there are different things that you can do, but you know your kid better. So it's just a very individual thing. You know what your kid is motivated by.
Absolutely, thank you. So we have about 10 minutes left. If we haven't answered your questions, please make sure you put it in the chat box. And also keep in mind, if you don't want to put your question out to the whole group, you can private message myself or Kenny. If you go the Dropbox, instead of send to everyone, just again, select myself, Amanda, or Kenny Frazier, we should say organizer or presenter. We can answer or ask these questions anonymously as well, okay? There is another question. Is it better if we're gonna do lunch meat to purchase it at the deli?
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna do that, then do obviously lean proteins instead of ham, that is pork, for example, or, you know, salami or whatever other cold meats. Then maybe do like the lean turkey or even chicken, organic, right? And then if you're gonna use some cheese, then use the low fat, low sodium. So yeah, obviously you're gonna look for healthier alternatives, right? We're not looking for a complete elimination, but healthier alternatives.
Yeah, and that's what we say too. And so just to confirm, is it healthier to buy it fresh from the deli and get it fresh sliced, both cheese and meats, or is there a difference than buying it prepackaged?
No, it goes back to reading the label. I mean, some of the prepackaged, it says right there, right? Low sodium, organic. So you don't know what you're buying on the deli either. You don't know where that came from. So it doesn't have a label. So it's just because you see it in the, you know, behind the glass doesn't mean that it's healthier or fresher.
Okay, great. Another question is it good to supplement children with vitamins even if they are gummies?
Yeah, you need to be careful with what type of gummies, because some of them, it goes back to the same thing. Read your labels, the ingredients. Some of them have ingredients that they're not. I mean, I think some of them even have some colors that are not, they're artificial. So just I would say, just do your research.
Right. Any other questions, Kenny, that are relevant to this group right now that we missed?
I don't think so. I think we addressed pretty much all of them. There's
Great, thank
actually
you.
one more. What is your perspective on desserts? This parent allows their kids one small treat a day, including, and they also give them vitamins and whatnot at the end of the day. But are desserts recommended, or what types of desserts would you recommend, if any?
Yeah. I mean, desserts are not evil, guys. I mean, I eat desserts, but there's always an alternative of a healthier way of making it yourself. There are some recipes that you can make your own ice cream with frozen bananas, or, you know, a smoothie and you freeze it and then it turns into like a Greek yogurt with blueberries and raspberries. You can make your own jam, like with frozen berries. There are so many recipes out there. You can make like chia seed pudding, vanilla with mango. And so when it comes to desserts, gearing more towards the natural sugars versus store-bought, you know, sugary desserts is better. So it's okay. Portions are important. What time of the day is important. How he or she reacts to sugar. Again, you know, some kids don't react well to sugar at all. So you don't want to, you don't want to give them that towards the end of the day that, you know, they cannot sleep. Sleep is important. So those kind of things. Now, if you do give them sugar, you got to understand they're going to have more energy. So what are you going to do after that? It's part of the lifestyle. Okay, so I'm going to give him this, and then he's going to have a lot of energy. Okay, so then let's go outdoors. Let's go play. Let's go walk the dog. Let's go, you know, walk around the block. So it's just a way of balancing.
Love that advice, Sonia. Like you said, balance, right? In moderation, everything in moderation, I feel for sure. And alternatives, as you mentioned, in our Balance 360 program, part of our nutritional guidance program in Brain Balance, we have about 2,000 or so recipes on our portal. And so many, we get so many kids choosing these alternative desserts and holidays and little recipe contests that we love doing. And the kids always love it because, again, they're getting involved and they get to try something new. And like you said, understanding how food affects them, you know, should they be eating a big bowl of carbs at the end of the night, or sugars, you know, how does it affect their well-being and sleep? So there's a lot of things to keep in mind. And again, nothing is evil. You don't want to create that relationship. So I appreciate all that advice. We're so aligned, and your expertise is so valuable. I think we're going to wrap it up here. Any last notes from you, Sonia?
Well, no, thank you very much for having me again. And I would just say, keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate things. We tend to do that, especially when it comes to our children, because we want them to be healthy. We want them to succeed. They're our future. And of course, it's not that complicated, but there's a world of information out there. And the more we go and look for information, the more we find and the more contradictory information we find. So I would say go back to basics. I show you, you know, kind of in a nutshell, you know, keep a balance between, in regards to nutrition, what your macros are, and then of course your vitamins, minerals. But yeah, don't overcomplicate it. Our bodies were not meant to have all, you know, complications in regards to nutrition or, you know, lifestyle.
All right, well, Brain Balance of San Diego and Chula Vista thanks Sonia's Healthy Corner, and we thank all you parents for spending the last hour with us We know that is a big time commitment, and your commitment to your child's health and nutrition and well-being is definitely to be applauded. So hopefully think about what can you do tonight or tomorrow or this week, just one small change to, you know, take that next step basically, right? Don't be so overwhelmed. It only takes one step. We'll be following up with you tomorrow, again, with a link to this presentation and Sonia's contact information as well, if you'd like to chat with her further. Again, she does do workshops for individuals as well as families and corporate events as well. So please make sure you stay in touch with her if you have additional questions. And I think that's about it. So have a good night, everyone, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Have a great night.